Hey, are you a business owner, entrepreneur, or professional? If so, we want you to apply to be a featured guest on our show. My name is Adam Torres, and I host the Mission Matters series of podcasts. I've recorded over 3,000 episodes, and we are just getting started. How do you know if you'd be a good guest to be on the show? Well, only one way to find out, and that's to apply, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. We want guests that have a story to tell, guests with a brand, a product, or a service that can benefit my audience of listeners. If this sounds like you, go to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. I'd love to talk to you and get to know more about your story. Again, head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, now let's get into the show. Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Innovation Podcast, your source for all things innovation. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres. Keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today I have AJ Yager on the line. He's co-founder and chief growth officer over at Praxis Metrics. AJ, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Adam. I'm excited about this.
All right, AJ, so you have a killer topic for us today. So turning data into growth and how to 10x your business with it. I mean, that's a big deal. And I'll tell you, our internal struggle initially was I didn't understand a lot of that. And the other co-founder, just to throw myself under the bus, by the way, Chirag, he's always from day one like data. And we didn't in the beginning have things set up right or set things up right. So we had a lot of rework and had a lot of things in pain we had to do that if I would have listened to him in the first place, he wouldn't have had to do. But it was all worth it in the end. So I guess, first off, just, again, using my story, I just had to let my audience know that this is an important topic that I definitely care about, and it's affected our business. I guess the first obvious question to ask you would be, so why should online companies care about data in their business today?
It's an awesome question, and I got to give your partner kudos for that because, and going back to that, it is really about creating a foundation of data that allows the owners, the founders, the team, whoever's a part of the team, to make better decisions. And data is not going anywhere. Data is simply information, and the flow of that, right, from all of our different technology stacks that it takes us to run a business successfully, is a lot. It's a ton of stuff out there, so it can be overwhelming. And everything used to be like this big data thing, right? Enterprise companies using big data. That's still going on. But nowadays, on our wristwatch, on our phone, in our businesses, we have a multitude of data. So it can be overwhelming, like I said. But now it's about, okay, what is the foundation? What are the business questions we're trying to answer? And how do we kind of set up the dominoes so that it's like easier and effortless, especially for those of us who didn't failed math class and are not data scientists. So does that make sense?
Well, it's great, and I think one of the main things here too, and so a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, executives listen to this podcast, and they're looking for tools, they're looking things that they can implement. And I'm one of those low-hanging fruit people, so I'm like, well, what can people do? I mean, like, what can they do today, or how should they be reframing their thought process, or other things like that? So, I mean, what are some of those first steps that let's talk to them? We know enterprise have teams working on this, but what are some of those things that maybe small to mid-sized companies can start doing or thinking about when it comes to data overall?
Awesome question. So it really, to simplify this, if data scares the heck out of you, or if your eyes glaze over after like 10 minutes of looking at a spreadsheet, this is how you get started. First and foremost, the first step is data collection. So meaning your technologies that are from Slack to your Shopify or your Infusionsoft or whatever your sales CRM and stuff are, there's data being collected. So what you've got to make sure is that are those technologies, and are your people doing the right thing to make sure your data collection or your tracking, I use the other word tracking, is set up correctly. Meaning there can be these holes in the bucket. So down the road, if you want to know things like lifetime value, like what does it cost me actually to acquire a customer? What is my true profitability? Some of these basic business questions we need to be able to answer. We've got to have the data the accurate data to be able to answer that, or else we can't build out dashboards and we can't really do what is necessary to answer those questions. So number one, just on the online marketing side, it's the easiest thing to relate to. Tracking every single marketing activity you're doing, from social posts to blog posts to all your paid media, affiliates, any activity, any specific activity. If you have a UTM link, which is a urchin tracking mechanism, it's a free thing. It's a link that has these variables that you can say what it is, where it's coming from, where it was posted, allows you to answer the question, where are my customers coming from? And this is so important in the beginning, because when you're driving up revenue, whether you're a startup or whatever, you're already in business, you need to know where your customers are coming from. And so tracking up front is making sure that every single marketing activity is tracked. And then also maybe you do just online sales, or maybe if you have a sales team, making sure that the information about your customers as much as possible is being inputted either manually or automatically into your CRM so that you can have the whole picture. So first starting is, what is going on in your business? Where could your holes be in your tracking, and how can you go about plugging those in? So plugging those holes. And number two is literally sitting down with your team and thinking about what are the best business questions to be answering by department or overall. What are you really trying to accomplish? And literally writing that question out. Then we can take those KPIs, those metrics that you really want to see, and link them to the business question so that you can see that progress moving forward, and then begin making decisions and taking action from that data.
All right, so this is what I fell victim to, and so we have some pretty complicated processes. Not really. I mean, we're not a tech company or a media company, but each piece of our content, just to give you a feel, I mean, it goes between 10 to 12 people to get one piece of our content out. So there's a lot, and there's a lot of steps in between that to get a piece of content out. So this is where I fell victim ultimately, is as we started to scale. I mean, we're putting out over 500 posts a week on social media. I host 9 shows, 50 episodes I do a week, interviewing people. And as we grew and as the company got bigger, we were on spreadsheets, and these spreadsheets got to be a handful at first when you're just starting and you're putting out one episode, or you know what I mean, you're doing this or that. But then when you start multiplying it, and then you're starting to refigure out, okay, so what's the best way? How can we change this spreadsheet? That's where my partner's his wisdom and foresight ultimately was like, we shouldn't have been on spreadsheets in the first place, but you didn't want to do it, Adam. So and it was pain to get through those, to redo everything. And I mean, thousands of episodes we've done, almost 4,000 now. So that being said, for those businesses that are listening to this that are either stuck on spreadsheets, or maybe if they're just getting started and they can circumvent that in the first place because they haven't grown that much, or they're still in that phase, how do people get off of spreadsheets?
That is the question. And at first I got to acknowledge you for, it's not bad. It's not a negative thing to be in spreadsheets. A lot of people think, but it's like, at least you're there, right? At least you're manually tracking stuff and you're building these. So that's a kudos. So if you're there in kind of spreadsheet hell, that's okay. It's part of the process. So just acknowledgement there, and especially with how many posts you just mentioned and how much content, that's really impressive. And the fact that you've owned up to it, you guys are tracking that, that's incredible. So how do you get out of that? Well, that is the next step. That is what we starting to step into the automation phase. So there's data collection and there's automation. And once you get to this data maturity, you really need to start looking at business intelligence tools. Just like you're using a CRM or you're using a marketing platform, you've got to have a platform to store your data, to own your data, first of all. So, there's APIs, all your different pieces of software have APIs, and people trust that the platforms have the information it's always going to be there. That is untrue. It is not the wild, wild west anymore in data. Data privacy is becoming, the companies are cracking down, the government's cracking down. You need to extract your data out of these tools and own it, literally start putting on a server and save it so that you can have your historical data. So if that platform went down or they stopped sharing that data with you, you have it. So number one, you've got to have a business intelligence tool. Now there's lots of different tools out there, and it really depends on the size of the business, your size of your team, your budget, where you're going, things like that. But something that our team can help companies with, we help make decisions on what is the best platform to have. And then from there, it's also taking, what you're doing in spreadsheets, takes not just a tool, but a individual who understands how to build dashboards, how to automate, and do a process called ETL, which is extract, transform, and load your data so that it's 1, accurate, 2, all in one place, and 3, digestible so that your team can learn from it and actually read the dashboards and then go figure it out. So I hope that makes sense. That's like the high level version of automation.
Yeah, that's so big time. And I guess, and you gave the high level, and for those that have not experienced automation or what it looks like, I'm just telling you, there's nothing that's going to, once you go down this path, which it's not always easy depending on how much of a mess you've made for yourself, like we did originally, it took us a good amount of time to dig it out. But like after we did, I mean, even just one simple process change can save your team hours. And every time that happens, like you just get this smile on your face because now that's an hour or hours. We had one simple automation process that we implemented. We get about any given month, we get between 600 and 700 applications to be on the show. And because of that, like just the amount of data as it grew, we had to make some changes in automating what types of applications we would manually review and read because the amount of data was just it's just too much. So then we had our own system of waiting, and by doing that, we saved one particular team member 2 hours a day. And I thought about it. Now I think about what that team member is working on. That's 10 hours a week that were freed that they were manually going through and doing all this, and they've been able to make some other great contributions because now that time was allotted to other things. And I'm just thinking about, wow, how does this happen? Automation. So for everybody listening, that's the power of what that could mean, and that's the power of even just freeing up and making the employee or your team members' life better. Like they don't want to be sitting there doing some of these manual processes that they're doing just because that's the way you've always done things. If you can make it a better work environment and give them more challenging things to do because some of those manual things are taken off their plate, man, you're going to have some happy team members. So that's just my plug. I'm really passionate about this topic, AJ, so I had to go into it, and I had to use myself as a case study there just to make sure people knew how important this is. So, AJ, that being said, if somebody is listening to this and they want to learn more about Praxis Metrics and how to connect with you and your team, final question, two-part question. Number one, what's the right type of company that's typically a good fit in terms of they get good value out of working with you and your team, whether it's niche or size of company or whatever your customer profile looks like, number one. And number two, what's the best way for them to follow up and to connect?
Awesome. Well, thanks for asking. Our target market, where we really, really shine and who we're really looking for, are e-commerce companies that are or digital product companies. And the difference is physical product and a digital product. So sometimes it's not shipping something, right? So the kind of companies that we work with mostly are around that $5 to about $20 million a year range that are looking to go over 100 million. And so we've got clients doing all the way over 100 or 200 million. So there's this big span, but that's our kind of target. Now, that's for our main core service. If you're smaller than that, under 5 million, like I said, data collection is an important part. So if you need help with tracking, you need help creating a data roadmap, then we also have some consulting services that are less expensive and then not a core service, but it helps people kind of get started, understand what the plan is and what the next steps are to do. So if you're under 5 million, you can also reach out to us and we can help you get started. The best place to go is just praxismetrics.com. It's Praxis. Metrics, metrics.com. You can get a free data strategy call there. There's awesome content on our blog. You can just learn more about what we do and how we do it there.
Man, that's awesome. Well, AJ, really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing more about all the great things you're doing over at Praxis Metrics. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you did, don't forget, hit that subscribe button. We have more great guests just like AJ coming up for you, and we don't want you to miss a thing. And AJ, thanks again for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Adam.